eye on the top.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show that we call Real Talk with Matt and
Carrie.
Yeah. Listen, man, we are excited to be back in this series of talks that, we're calling Let's Talk About Sex.
Yeah.
And it's honestly one of our favorite things to talk about, sex.
Yeah. And apparently your favorite thing to listen to because we got far more views
And questions.
and questions and comments.
Than we have ever received.
Yes.
And so finally,
yeah.
we felt like we maybe found our sweet spot,
Yeah.
which I kind of enjoy and am really looking forward to continue on talking to. So today, we're actually going to be talking about something that we're calling the seasons of sex, okay?
Yes.
The seasons of sex. But before we jump into that, something that I want to encourage you, first of all, is be sure to like our Facebook page, subscribe on YouTube, and like the videos, share them, and all of those different things, because we're going to be doing some fun things here in the next couple of weeks, doing some giveaways and different fun things that I think will be great. And so we want you to stay up to date and aware of those things.
And we also want to hear from you.
Yes.
So we'd love to hear any questions you have or things you want us to talk about.
Absolutely. So right now, though, you can share the video that's live on Facebook, because it'll only be on Facebook through the duration of this video. And so we want people to be able to join us. And we think that will be very, very, very fun.
That'll be fun.
So, babe, I was thinking today, and as we kick off our second week of talking about sex, I was thinking about sex. And it reminded me, we are taking a trip in just over a month.
Mm-hmm.
And you may or may not remember this, but this was the first time and the last time I offered, because I got shot down very, very quickly. But do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Yes.
We're going on a trip. You do.
Yeah. I think you're talking about our first plane ride together.
I am.
After we had been married.
I am.
Well, actually, it was our second, because we rode a plane on our honeymoon.
Oh, but this plane was actually like safe. It was made for passengers more than 19 people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, that was a scary situation.
Right.
Guys, can you tell me what I'm talking about? Like, if you're a married guy, tell me what you're talking, like what I'm thinking. Here we are.
I don't think we have many men on right now.
Well, probably not, but that's all right. That's all right. Some women are thinking the same thing. No?
No.
So do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes.
What was it?
You wanted us to join the Mile High Club.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
We were, let me frame this out a little bit. We were youth leaders.
Okay.
Leading a youth missions trip
on
to Singapore.
A 747.
Yeah.
There's
it
like
was not
600
happen.
seats on this plane.
This is a perfect example of your expectations versus my expectations of this event.
We were married.
We are not small people. The airplane
It was a 747.
No.
Guys, listen.
Oh, Dawn got
Babe,
it. Yep.
Babe,
you were right, Dawn.
Listen, hey.
What?
We're traveling in just over a month.
No, just don't
This
even.
is our shot.
Don't even bring those.
This is our shot
on our trip.
This is our shot.
No.
Come on, everybody.
Guys, I need some help here.
This is our shot.
No.
Oh,
Let's talk about what we're seasons of sex.
Ooh, I believe we are entering a season of sex.
No. All right.
Wow. Okay. All right. Hey, listen. Like we said,
That's how you communicate.
that's clear communication. And guys, I'm telling you, there's going to come a season. Okay, it might be another 20 years from now, but I'm going to revisit this again because I just am.
Okay.
You know,
So anyways,
Yeah,
we had
whatever.
a question last week.
We did. We had several questions.
did.
But this one really struck a chord with
Yeah,
us
this was a good
because, again, last week we talked about sex. We talked about why it's important to wait. And we kind of talked about the fact that, some of us end up carrying things into our marriages or those covenant relationships from a sexual standpoint that really is hard to deal with long term.
Right.
And so somebody asked us, multiple people asked us, but the gist of the questions that came together were this. Okay, let's say that I am that person that wasn't a virgin when we got married.
Right.
And matter of fact, a couple of people said, you know what, we brought children into our marriage, okay, from other relationships, from other marriages, from different situations. And so now that we're in our marriage relationship, I'm feeling the guilt and the shame and the weight of some of that. So what do I do in order to move forward in confidence in my relationship sexually?
Yeah. Well, you and I talked about this a little bit because we thought there was a couple practical things that you can do in your marriages. And the first thing is to communicate with your spouse.
Yeah.
How you're feeling, honestly, how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And, just what you're carrying from your past. That doesn't mean you dredge up old details.
No.
But it's talking about how you're feeling, because whatever it's happening, however you're feeling in that situation in your marriage is causing a rift and a wall between you and your spouse if you're not going to talk about it.
Right. Because really, and here's the deal, guys, what we really believe about sex is that it's more than about the physical act of sex feeling amazing and just being absolutely wonderful. It really is to create a sense of intimacy.
Right.
And so anytime there are secrets or anytime there are, even lies that you're believing about yourself, like you're not worth being in this relationship or you're not capable of being all in this relationship because of what you've carried into it, that's a lie, okay? Yeah. You're in the relationship that you're currently in this marriage relationship currently, because that's where you're supposed to be. And so you're worthy of it and you're capable of giving and receiving love that way. So you got to communicate honestly and you got to communicate openly. Yeah. And some of you're going to find that maybe your spouse currently is not the person that you can communicate most clearly with, okay? Right. And that doesn't mean you go find somebody, and here's what I would always encourage. Go find a safe relationship, not your best friend all the time, not even your sibling all the time or your parents, whatever. But we would encourage, and most of you guys know we pastor a church. Right. Find the pastor of your local church, or find one of the people on staff that are counseling, or one of the group leaders, and say, hey, I need to confide something in you, and be able to have that conversation. I think that's a big deal. And the second thing that you got to do is you got to forgive yourself, right? You got to forgive yourself. So you got to communicate honestly and openly, and then you got to forgive yourself, okay? And stop being so hard on yourself. So, thank you so much for your question. Keep your questions coming, man. We want to be able to address them and get back to you and communicate with you. We always love hearing from you guys, and that like you said, we feel like maybe we struck a chord and found some people's spaces of interest.
Well, I don't think a lot of people are talking about sex.
I don't think a lot of people are talking about it, and I think it's interesting because our podcast, our Apple listens have gone way up, even higher than our YouTube, because people don't want to subscribe to YouTube because they're like, oh man, are they going to think I'm a pervert? No, we think you're normal is really what the deal is. So subscribe on YouTube, because what we want to start doing is even taking some of those, taking 2 minutes on a Thursday to address some of those questions, and so we would just put that up on YouTube. So, all right, send your questions. Okay,
seasons of sex.
Seasons of sex.
Yes.
Talk to us about some of the different seasons of sex that we think we see.
Yeah.
Again, we're not experts. We just have some experience. We're almost 20 years in, and so that's what we want to talk about. So
we really know one thing we learned right away is that we have different ideas of sex. You and I, men and women, just have different ideas of what sex will look like, especially in your marriage.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about, the seasons of your marriage.
Right.
So there's kind of like your honeymoon season.
Because we believe that before marriage, your season of sex should be non-existent. No sex. Don't do that to yourself, okay? Yeah. You think it's a good idea. You think it's going to be amazing.
But we also believe in short engagements.
Oh, yes, we do. Come on. Hey, tell everybody how long we were engaged.
We were engaged for 6 months. 5 months. We dated for 7 weeks.
Dated for 7 weeks.
We got engaged, and we were engaged for 5 more months.
Yes.
We were a total of 7 months.
Yes.
And then we
before
got
we
married.
were married. Yeah.
But I will say, it was rocky at the start
Yeah.
because of some different expectations that we had.
Right. Because we didn't understand this stuff.
Right. Because we had our honeymoon phase.
Ooh, honeymoon.
Then we had some children.
Children's.
And then we had some after kids phase. Mm-hmm. And then we have what we're calling and beyond.
And beyond.
Which is actually the longest season
Yeah.
of your life and probably the most ups and downs, I would say,
Right,
too.
right.
So let's start talking about our honeymoon season.
Let's talk about the honeymoon, because everybody comes into the honeymoon phase with expectations, and we said, men and women differ in their expectations for sex, but the
Right.
reality is everybody differs.
Everybody does, because it's not like men think this way, women
Right.
think this way.
And it's based on, we think differently based on the way that we grew up,
Right.
way that we
What
grew
we've been
up,
exposed
what we were
to.
exposed to. A lot of different things play into that.
Yeah.
For instance, I was personally introduced to porn as a 5-year-old.
Right.
Okay. And so that for me created a lot of expectation and thoughts of what
Well, and you had some
sex
bad
was going to
advice,
be.
too.
And I had some really bad advice.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you weren't exposed to porn. You didn't get the same bad advice that I did, even
No.
after you started and were a part of a church and,
Right.
and gave your life to the Lord and started moving forward. And so
But
I
I
went
think our
in-
biggest mistake was that we didn't communicate
right.
about what we were expecting.
Because you think you're just going to go in and you think that your expectations are just going to be fulfilled and that's what's going to be met. And
Right.
I'm thinking my expectations are going to be fulfilled and met, but
Right.
we didn't realize. We were too stupid to realize, and I think most people are
Yeah.
too stupid to realize that your expectations are
Yeah.
actually going to be different, and it's based on what took place in the past.
But I think one of the biggest issues with pornography is that it gives people unrealistic expectations.
100%,
of sex.
man.
Because your marriage bed is never meant to look like. I mean, whatever you do in your marriage bed is between you and your spouse, but just all the things that are
as
involved
long
in that.
as long as it's between you and your
Right,
spouse,
right.
right?
And so you have to have a realistic expectation of what sex is going to look like when you get married, and keeping it mutually beneficial.
Right,
Right. It's
right.
not one serving the other. It's being mutually beneficial.
Well, and I think that's the thing where porn really creates a problem is because it is so selfishly motivated. So that I can be stimulated, so that I can be fulfilled. And honestly, from my standpoint and opinion, that's really where masturbation becomes an issue as well, is because it is so selfishly motivated and fulfilling yourself.
Yeah.
And that's never meant to be the context of your marriage bed. It's
Right.
supposed to be, I'm yours and you're mine,
Right.
right? And
Right.
what we do is mutually beneficial and really ultimately to serve one another, right?
Right.
And so that's a really, really big deal.
Yeah, and your honeymoon, obviously, before you have kids, you just have more time for sex.
Yeah.
You don't have anybody knocking
But
on the door or
do you-
just bursting in your
Yeah,
room.
or asking for a high five
Yeah,
when,
yeah.
guys, listen, I think we've told the high five story. We won't tell it again. If you need to know it,
We'll find
I don't
it.
know which
It's back
episode
on
it is.
But
We
so,
should-
well,
we
this
should-
kind of leads us into the next season, which is after kids. Did you want to add anything more about the honeymoon?
I think so because,
phase?
I mean, our honeymoon, for instance,
Was awful.
it was awful
Yeah.
because I thought, based on my past experience and exposures, that we were going to make movies.
Yeah.
Like literally, that's what I thought we were going to do.
Not
I thought we
happening.
were making movies, and you're like, no.
I wanted to go for
Like,
long walks on the
yeah.
beach.
And I'm like, the beach, man, I don't want to go to the beach. This
Yeah.
is ridiculous. I want to make movies. But my expectations were so unrealistic.
And we just fought the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole
so,
time.
one thing, if you don't get anything else from that point, get this. The marriage bed is undefiled. Okay, that's what the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 13. But here's what you need to know about that. And that just means that the marriage bed is pure as long as it's mutually beneficial. So you don't bring a third party into your marriage bed or relationship. And does that mean you can only ever have sex in the bed?
No?
No, it doesn't. It means that you could have sex on an airplane.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just saying.
on.
I'm just saying. But you don't bring a third party into the marriage bed. You don't bring movies. You don't bring, those types of things that would cause you to go somewhere else in your mind or in your emotions or heart.
It's basically just whatever you both agree on.
Exactly.
And that's what that whole piece is.
But what if people say, well, okay, I hear what you're saying, but we agree that it's okay to...
Well, it depends on it just depends on how you're trying
What's your heart motivation?
What?
What's the heart
Right,
motivation?
like why?
Right? Yeah.
Why do you want to add to? Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so after kids, this is one that we get a lot because we've got a lot of young families in our church. And after kids, it just is a whole new ball game because everybody's tired. You're not getting a lot of sleep. You all of a sudden have another person in your house. And there's just a lot more.
This is, and I'll be honest with you, and I don't know that we've ever necessarily talked about this, but I hear a lot of young dads say, hey, my wife, I saw some stuff go down with my wife that I didn't expect.
When she was giving birth.
When she's giving birth.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, it feels different after, okay? And so...
Got to talk about it.
You got to talk about it. You got to communicate that because here's what happens often is because you got that 6-week time period where like, hey,
It's the no-go zone.
it's no go. And so what happens is we get back into some habits that are maybe a little bit different where first time parents, maybe you start prioritizing the kid
Right.
more than you do one another,
Right.
and rightfully so, but it can't stay there, okay? And so what ends up happening is because you're taking 6 weeks off for sure, some women are like, let's do 8 weeks or 10, maybe
Yeah.
12. And then, you know what, guys, you're not going to feel like it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember we got in some fights because
Yeah.
you were like wanting it more than I was wanting to give it because there was just somebody was always touching me. I remember feeling like, especially when we had Cooper and the twins, and so we had 3 kids under 2, and I was like, someone's always touching me. I just don't want to be touched.
Yeah.
And so we had a conversation, and I said, babe, it can either be quality or it can be quantity. It can't be both. And I said,
Not in this
I was
season.
like, in this season, I don't have time for foreplay. I don't have energy for it. It can be quality or it can be quantity. And so, we just had to communicate that because I just knew I didn't have it to give. And it was a season. It was a season that we had to work through. It wasn't going to look like it did before we had kids ever again. I mean, it just wasn't.
Yeah.
And so we just had to talk about it, though.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, is talking about it and being intentional.
So practically, babe, what are some things that we ended up doing?
Babe.
I mean, obviously we're not going to share details, but practically, for real, like people want to know.
Oh, well, you just sneak it in when you can.
Yeah, like during nap time, right? I remember getting a text a couple of times like, hey, the twins are going down for a nap. And I'm like, I'm taking a break. I'll be home.
I said, the time is now. So it's now or never.
And I'm
buddy.
like, I can be ready. I can be ready.
It's now or never.
But here's the thing, and I think this is an unrealistic expectation of a spouse, okay? An unrealistic expectation is, we're not having sex, so my expectation is then you're not doing anything. That's unrealistic. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to be able to go long term without having a release of that tension, that pressure that's building up. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is oftentimes people will fall into extramarital relationships. Mm-hmm. I don't think it starts there. I think it starts with, looking at porn. I think that it starts, continues on with masturbation. Mm-hmm. And any of those things, guys, it's not within the context of your marriage or marriage bed.
Do you think
that, right.
Here's a question. Do you think that guys feel bad about bringing it up after you have kids?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, because they see that your wife is exhausted and she's
absolutely.
tired and she's got baby poop and spit up all over.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
But can I tell you something as a guy? Like, and I don't know if everybody's wired this way, but for me, like, there was nothing more attractive than you being the mother of my kids. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, oh my God, like, I didn't care,
right.
And I know some guys do, but, and so I think this kind of goes both ways.
And it goes back to having your needs met, mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
You have to talk, guys.
Gotta communicate,
if you can't
man.
talk with your spouse about this stuff, then you've got a big problem.
Yeah, you gotta communicate.
Okay, so you
gotta have lunchtime sex, and you gotta have morning sex.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm telling you, like,
quality or quantity, guys.
yeah, listen, and put on like one of those. Guys, let's be honest. Put on one of those little 5-minute YouTube videos for your kids and just set them down. Just set them down and say, "Mommy and Daddy will be right back." I promise.
We're gonna have a conversation in the bedroom real quick.
We're gonna go have fun. That's what we call it at our house. We call it having fun.
We don't anymore because now they know what that
Yeah,
means.
they know what it is now.
So, and beyond. Let's talk about this because we're running out of time.
And this is kind of where we're at. So yeah, I'm sorry, guys. We're pushing it. We're going a little bit long, but
it's okay.
I'm having fun. We're gonna have fun.
Anyways, and beyond. Your kids are older. You have a little more time.
People are logging off like crazy. They're sick of us. Beyond.
Here's the deal, and beyond. You have to stay connected.
Gotta stay connected.
Because you get caught up in sports and activities and work and all this stuff. Or even just you become best friends and you forget that you were once romantically involved.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to stay connected, and being intimate with each other. Having sex is all about staying connected. That's why we talk about the 72-hour rule, like trying to keep that kind of consistent time frame of being together, because it keeps you connected and intimate, and remembering that like you love each other. And
I've heard from so many guys like, "Hey, I love that your wife talks about the 72-hour rule. How did you get her to do that?" And I'm like, that's her idea. You know what I mean?
Well, it's not my idea.
No, it's not your idea, but like
I
the
just
way that
know
you talk
it's
about
so
and
important
communicate
to
it,
stay connected to your spouse.
It's not for me.
Right, no.
Right? It's for us.
Because while your connection may be sometimes more physically motivated, and women, sometimes that's you, more physically, but then one of you may be more emotionally. You need that emotion, you need that connection, and that comes through sex.
Yeah.
It's not just about that physical part, but it's also that emotional connection and that just that closeness that you share.
It's a spiritual connection
is.
as well.
And it's so important to take trips and go on dates and go on walks and all that stuff.
Keep it alive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's
Revive
also
that
why.
thing.
Yeah. Come on, girl. But that's also, guys, why it's so important to not commit to doing that before you're in that covenant relationship, because you are awakening things before the time is right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, if I can, because here's the deal. There are things that are for people that are older than us that are in that beyond stage, like, because of health issues.
Right.
Maybe you're not having sex as much or as often. And, and there are, guys, I'm telling you, don't be too proud to get some medical help if necessary, okay? And I'll leave it at that. I think you know what I'm talking about. Don't be too proud to do that. And wives, and husbands, don't be beyond being very patient as well. Is that fair?
Yeah, because you have to be. We're not being selfish in our sexuality.
It's always about being selfless.
It's about being selfless. And so if you're struggling,
which is another reason that you wait, because all not waiting says is I'm so selfish that I cannot wait.
But if you're struggling with a health issue, or I'm struggling with a health issue, I'm not going to get mad at you because we can't have sex like I want to have sex.
Right.
I'm going to be patient with you because you're my husband and we're for each other.
And you never know what the next season holds.
You just don't know what's coming up. I mean, it could be anything. And so, again, you have to talk about it.
So, babe, I had this question asked of me. I spoke at a conference a couple months ago about sex, and had somebody come up and ask me, said, "Hey, listen, because of health reasons, my wife and I haven't had sex in several years." It was huge. Anyway, and the guy says, "Is it then appropriate for me to watch porn and masturbate?" And I said, "Gosh, as much as like just naturally, I would say yes, it's appropriate. It's absolutely not appropriate." You know what I mean? Because again, you're bringing something into your marriage bed that's not pure, and that is not mutually beneficial, right? And so it's not okay for that to be taking place, because intimacy isn't being established between us if I'm watching porn and masturbating, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree with it. And I just think I've met a lot of people whose spouse has been involved in pornography, and it feels like such a betrayal. And so I think that goes back to that honoring one another and, just like you said, being mutually beneficial. That's a tough situation.
And I know we're getting long here, but that brings something else up to me, because you said it feels like a betrayal. Can I be honest? Like, when there's an extended period of time where we're not having sex, and it just seems like it's because, she's tired because she's caring for the kids, or she's tired, that feels like a betrayal too. You know what I mean?
Does it feel like a betrayal? Does it feel like you're not important, or you're being ignored, or you know what I mean? I think the word betrayal.
I guess I don't know how to most accurately categorize that, but
you just kind of feel forgotten.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Well, and I think that's where loneliness comes into the marriage, when somebody's prioritizing something else in front of the other spouse, because we believe that it's God and then it's one another. This is the most important relationship.
More important than kids.
And so if I'm
Your kids are important.
If I'm prioritizing my kids, then you all of a sudden feel like you're not as important. Like I'm not honoring you, I'm not loving you, I'm not putting you first. And if you're looking at porn or something, I feel like you're not honoring me. And so, I mean, in that way, or vice versa. I mean, women look at porn too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just men.
And guys prioritize other things over their wives.
And women are sometimes the ones that want sex more. I mean, it's just, that's what we're saying at the beginning.
And we have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah,
and we have to clearly
different.
communicate. We got to clearly communicate those expectations, because guys, I'm telling you, God created sex to be really, really great in the context of a marriage.
Yeah.
And there are things that you're going to have to continue to navigate throughout.
It's not
in
just
order to make
we
it really
figure
good.
out what works, and that works for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about being married for the rest of your life, there are seasons of life that you're going to go through, hard seasons, tough seasons, great seasons, amazing seasons.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to ebb and flow with the seasons that you're in.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
Okay,
good.
I don't know if I can do this, but can we jump back to one more thing that I do want to talk?
I'm not talking about the Mile High Club anymore.
Oh, shoot.
That
wasn't it.
Okay.
That wasn't it. But you brought it up, so I'm seeing some hope here, y'all. I am seeing some hope. So here, I do want to jump back to this, because one thing that we hear pretty consistently in the kids' season, is, I feel like my wife's not present when we're having sex, because we still are in the honeymoon season in our minds, like where I want her engaged. I want her like wanting it. You know what I'm saying? And there are just moments when we've had kids in the house, like you don't want to have sex. You're literally having sex to serve, right?
Yeah, that's good.
And so guys have been like, well, if she doesn't want it, then I don't want to do it, and use it as an excuse to watch porn or to masturbate. And when I'm talking about porn, I'm talking about even soft stuff that makes you, just go somewhere else in your mind that's away from your wife.
Right.
Okay. I'm not talking about just like hardcore, just the gay stuff, and so here's one thing that I'll say about porn before we stop is porn is easy, and it doesn't cost you anything from a relational standpoint. Like, porn doesn't want you to do the dishes, and porn doesn't want you to wake up in the middle of the night and rock your child back to sleep, and porn doesn't expect you to pick up your laundry and things like that, and so it's easy. But don't fall into that trap of easy, because it will never, ever, ever fulfill you the way that a deep and intimate relationship with your spouse can.
Yeah.
And so stop being stolen from.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to give you the fulfillment that you're looking for.
Well, and I think from the other side of that, always being present and engaged that way, it is an act of service sometimes, where I don't necessarily feel like it, or you don't necessarily feel like it, but in order to honor one another, you do that. You have sex, or you be intimate. That's where that quantity versus quality thing comes in, because it's, the quality is that you're together and you're intimate.
So there's a question on Facebook Live right now that says, hey, quantity versus quality, why not both?
And I think that's
Why not both?
I mean, it can be both in
Just
certain
not
seasons.
in every season.
In certain
not
seasons.
in every season. It's just that's
Yeah.
an unrealistic expectation for every season of your life, right?
Yeah.
When your kids are older, it can be both, and
Yeah.
when you're in a honeymoon, it can be both. But
When
you
you've
know,
got 3 kids under 2, or
even one little,
kid,
I mean, gosh,
it's just,
you're just setting yourself up for disappointment if you.
and I guess the quantity that would be determined on the quantity. I mean, if it's once a week, yeah, it can be quality. You know what I mean?
Better
But
be.
if you're wanting 72-hour rule,
I like 72-hour rule, girl.
anyways, we got to get
Yeah,
off
we
of this
gotta
thing.
get
We
off
are
here.
long.
You guys, I'm sorry. We're so long, but we love you. Thank you for engaging
Yeah.
on the live feed. Don't forget to subscribe, to like the videos on YouTube, share the page with somebody, to let them know there's some quality content from a couple of people who aren't experts but have some experience and are willing to share it. So we love you. Keep the questions coming. It gives us some good things to talk about. We're planning 2 more weeks on this topic, specifically
It'll probably
about
be more than
sex.
that.
It'll probably be more than that, depending on your questions. But man,
Yeah.
we appreciate you. God bless you guys. Thanks for joining. This has been Real Talk with Matt